I know why I armor up every day, kid. But what about you?
My dad invented this suit. I want to carry on what he started.
Yeah. I know all about living the torture.
Blade is wasted potential. This is a topic I kind of wanted to discuss, especially during the start of Season 4, and exactly how I feel like Blade is doing in the current state of the game, and even a little bit before when he first launched. So let's rewind the clock back to when we first heard Blade's name, or more specifically, read Blade's name in Mall Rivals via the closed alpha test that was data mined by data miners, and that was our first glimpse of him as well as other heroes that are in the roster now and other heroes that are soon to be in the roster. Someone had posted their findings of the data mine on Reddit, and it listed Blade as 1-1 something, along with characters that ended up making it into the game before we even knew about them at the time. Now for some context, I think that Blade is one of the coolest Marvel characters, one of the coolest comic book characters you can think of. However, a little bit of a hot take, but he's purely aesthetic, which is totally fine. And I think people can say that they like Blade mostly because he looks cool, rather than actually knowing his character. But of course there might be some more hardcore folks that like his design and like his character even more. I'm not really like a comic book guy. I don't really read comics or something, and with Blade, you know, he can't even get his movie. Anyways, Blade is pretty much teased in those closed alpha data mines. I'm excited. A lot of people are also excited. We were figuring out when he would come. Then lo and behold, we start getting teases about Blade that he's coming really soon. Netease was sort of doing like this in-game weird shenanigan where he's like asleep and he's like awake, or he's like hurt, or he's like eating, or he's like, I don't know, taking a shit. All in all, we know that he's in the game, he's confirmed, and they're teasing him. Come to the early marketing of Season 3.5, we start seeing more about Blade, we start seeing his character trailer, and we start getting a glimpse of what kind of character Blade is going to be. From his kit, to his playstyle, to how he looks like in motion, as well as his ult. I still don't think I've seen more people be excited over a certain character being added to the game than with Blade. And speaking of excitement, I actually wanted to say that there are kind of two sides. Side one, pretty much the character himself, the aesthetic of the character, Blade. Like I said, everyone thinks Blade is cool. A majority of people think Blade is cool. A lot of people really just like Blade. And on the other side, it pertains to what we've seen in his kit, particularly in those gameplay videos that we were seeing with like his reveal trailer. And that is what he could bring to the game, shaking things up, and what he could bring to the table when it comes to solving certain issues that the game currently has, and just other grievances players have with the game. So come a week before his release in Season 3.5, you had a particular amount of people gain early access to the character and were able to pretty much showcase his gameplay a little bit more in depth on his toolkits and just showcase matches with him. And I swear to God, I remember watching the initial Blade gameplay reveal, and when I was watching him, I couldn't help but think in my mind like, yo, is this dude getting messed up in the trailer even? And obviously I knew not to take it too seriously, at least at the time, because it was just a reveal trailer, you know, like it's nothing to go off on. But I just thought it was kind of funny that like in a reveal trailer it's supposed to make him look like badass, and he had his techno music playing in the back. He was kind of struggling. But anyways, I digress. You know, to get back to the people that got to play him early, I'm sure a lot of you guys saw that, you know, via thumbnails or titles, that Blade is broken, Blade is OP, Blade is a monster, Blade is whatever. However, when I would check those videos out, I would remember making sure to keep things, you know, with a grain of salt, because a lot of those matches don't really represent how a character would actually fit in a real environment with other players rather than bots. That's why I think seeing all these videos that are titled that, oh, he's busted and blah blah, I think they were a little bit disingenuous, you know, whether it be intentional or not. But you can't really take a character and pretty much assume how they are going to fare in the base game when they're added just by playing bot matches. Most of these early access previews were against bots or training mode, which were just showcasing his abilities. But with that in mind, whenever I would look at one of these videos, saying like Blade is busted or whatever, and I'd click on it and the person is doing a bot match, I knew not to sort of take it too seriously, because a bot match is very different from a match with like real life players. And this isn't against the content creators who got early access or anybody who got early access to Blade and made content about it and their impressions of him, because I'm sure they can only play so much with the character in this early access period. I'm sure Netease tells them, they have to only play bot matches or something. I don't know if there was like a live 6v6 with other player creator event that they did. I don't know. You guys would have to tell me in the comments. But a majority of videos about Blade and his impressions were in a bot lobby environment. And not to get too far off topic, but that's something overall I wanted to quickly just mention, is that whenever you get new heroes, you are going to get people that have early access to the game, and Netease is usually going to have them only play, so these sort of AI lobbies. I just wanted to say, be very careful when it comes to expectations and what you think a character is going to fare like in a real environment based on this AI environment. Like, you could probably be watching these videos and not even be thinking about that. You just want to see the character doing cool stuff, which is totally fine. But with certain titles of these videos saying like, oh, he's gonna break the meta, he's gonna be busted, he's gonna be overpowered, it's it could have the tendency to alter your anticipations dramatically. So a week after all these like early previews are done, Blade is officially out in game. Blade comes out, and I'm sure you guys know that everybody, and I mean every single person, has at least rushed to pick Blade immediately during a quick play match. Obviously, it takes time to learn a character, so it's like people are going to be naturally not good with him. People are learning as they go. They're learning what's the play, what do you do, how do you do this, what's the cycle. However, as time went on, like let's say about a week or two, people are noticing that Blade is, a little bit on the weak side. And when I mean a little bit, I mean a lot. When Blade was first shown in his kit, he was pretty much like a hybrid range to melee character. His name is Blade, yet when he finally came out, his gun was probably the best part of his kit. It was like the very most underrated part of his kit, despite his name being Blade and him having a cool sword and like the trailer showcasing his sword a lot. But his shotgun was the MVP of his kit because of how much damage he did with it. It worked like a hybrid of like Bucky's handgun and Punisher's shotgun. It works weird. I still don't even know exactly how it works, but there's like a sweet spot you hit with it, and that sweet spot, man, it hits like a truck. However, then you get to the Blade part of Blade, and it is extremely underwhelming. Visually, it looks cool, but when you playing Blade, the way he is you want to be in that red transform state all the time. Not all the time, but whenever you are going to melee. Because without that transform state, his normal melee attack with his sword, they're not... Like, why would you be using it rather than his gun up close? You want to be in that transform state because you get his lifesteal. However, even then, people realized that his transform state and his melee attacks were something that was not worth the hassle. And what I mean by that is, he would gain lifesteal, right? But he would also have reduced healing. And honestly, it made him really not worth going into that form because of the reduced healing. His lifesteal was bugged at the time, so it's like the return of investment you would get for the damage you would output and stuff was not worth it, because the healing you would receive would be extremely low and the lifesteal you would receive would also be very low. So for the most part, you'd end up dying, or not dying, but you'd always be in critical, and that puts a strain on the supports of like trying to keep you alive. And a lot of these cases, that aspect of tunnel vision kicks in, because it's like you see somebody that's critical, you want to heal them as much as possible so they don't die. But I digress, that's other stuff. His sword play was, it was not great despite his name. And to move on, there was another part of Blade's kit which I personally was excited for. I know it's a very hot take to anybody that has played Overwatch before, and this is the introduction of a status ailment called Anti, or Anti-Heal, which, it's in the name. You kind of get the idea of what it is. But in Overwatch 2, Anti was a status ailment that a certain character named Ana Amari would throw a grenade, a biotic grenade that has sort of a two-way go, where she could throw it at her allies and it increases their healing, or the more potent is if she throws it at an enemy, they would not be able to heal. They would have this purple indicator on top of their health bar, and their healers would not be able to heal them for a certain amount of time. In his gameplay trailer and description of his toolkit, as well as early previews of videos and stuff like that, which you got from content creators, they detail that he pretty much has something very similar to an anti. While not completely, because it more so worked as a healing reduction rather than a full stop healing, thing, it still was something that I feel like the game absolutely needed, and is something that I think the game still absolutely needs now, because this game has a lot, and I mean a lot of healing, but to be fair, there's also a lot of damage in the game. But sometimes, the way that certain supports work, they just heal so much. And remember, this game is open queue, so this isn't even counting for the teams that end up going a third support, which is still kind of common. On top of that, there is so much overhealth in this game. Almost anything, any character, except I think supports for the most part, but any character from tank to most of the DPS, anything they do will grant them overhealth in some way, shape, or form. And to me, that is an issue, because overhealth is such a prominent thing in this game, where you just get it for doing absolutely nothing sometimes, or just for using an ability. Like, there are certain characters that don't need to have that at all. Like, for some reason, Spider-Man gets a billion overhealth whenever he does his ult, or Buggy gets overhealth for using like 90% of his moveset. Venom gets like a billion HP when he presses one button. Granted, Venom is a different case. He's kind of like Wrecking Ball in Overwatch, if anybody knows who that is. But I still think he gets way too much overhealth. But I digress. Overhealth is another discussion that I could make in that future video or something. So back to Blade. Anti-healing, or more so specifically healing reduction. I'm happy. That's something that the game needs, in my opinion. However, when you play the game with Blade, everyone ended up noticing that Blade's anti-healing or healing reduction was it was nothing but a slap on the wrist on whoever uses it. Yes, it could be effective, especially when he does it with his ult. However, it's in a case where, say for example, the enemy Blade, or you Blade, do your ult on the enemy team, and it's like boom, the enemy team's gonna get reduced healing. There are certain characters, I think Luna and Cloak, who will just out heal that still regardless. Like, you could technically kill somebody in Luna's ult if you do their ult, they're antied or healing reduced, and multiple people shoot that one person, and then yes, they would die. But in the 6v6 environment where there's just so much chaos and other stuff happening, not to mention the other support could still also be healing, it's a little harder to do that. It's a little easier said than done. And I think a lot of people can agree with me on that, is that, his anti isn't as potent as it should be or could be, because whether you or not you think this game needs an anti of sorts, that's up to you. That's your opinion, that's my opinion, whatever. But all in all, his healing reduction isn't as a strong part of his kit than, say his normal sword. And to me, that actually bummed me out a lot, because again, I think this game needs some sort of healing reduction or full stop anti, especially during triple support comps. So overall, you take Blade, you take that his normal sword isn't as strong as it should be, you take his transform state, which is literally a double-edged sword, no pun intended, that is more spiky on the other end than the other side, and then you get one of his biggest potential gimmicks, and it isn't as good as it could be. All in all, it just made Blade feel very underwhelming, very weak. And I'm sure you guys noticed too in your games, whether it be quick play or competitive, well, mostly competitive, you see a huge drop off of people playing Blade. Like, absolutely no one is picking Blade at all. No one is banning him, no one is picking him. He's just in this, sort of forgotten state where he's just gone. I'll see more Blades in quick play, but that's quick play. People will just play whatever they want, But in terms of his viability as a character, I don't think it's there at all. Even with like these adjustments he got, like these sort of buffs he got recently, he's still pretty weak and forgettable. And I see absolutely no one talking about Blade anymore. That fire, that people had when it comes to discussing Blade before his launch, or even during like the first week of his launch, it's gone. And I suppose you could say that for a majority of characters, but Blade, like I said before, he was probably the character that had the most hype behind him when it comes to being added to the roster of the game. And then now he's like in this sort of limbo state where people just kind of forget about him. Is Blade terrible? No. Is he even bad? No. but I think he's not particularly good. And in a game as volatile as Tomorrow Rivals, it's very hard to play a character that is and try to make them work. Even if you are a one-trick Blade, you can try, but I think he's one of those cases where it's like you can try all you want, but it's still going to be something that's very difficult because he just doesn't commit fully to what he wants to do as a character. However, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. However, it could be a very scary light, a shaky light. I do think Blade's issues aren't design-wise, they are more so numbers and balancing-wise, right? I think with a certain amount of tweaks, he could actually be, pretty good. However, he could also be kind of scary if they over-tweak him, if they over-tune him. But I guess to be fair, you could say that about any character. But yeah, no, it's not all dark and gloomy here with Blade. I feel like he is a disappointment. He is wasted potential as of now, from his anticipation to who he is as a character to what he could have brought to the game with his quirks and abilities, with healing reduction, whatever you want to call it. But he doesn't fully commit to anything. Netease didn't seem to want to fully commit to anything about his playstyle. The only thing that feels like it's a solid thing is his gun, his primary fire, and that's about it. There really isn't nothing else about Blade that feels, like strong, like a strong suit. And with something very direly needed in the game, like healing reduction, and then that being so underwhelming with Blade, I just feel like with some tuning, it could be good. So it's not all, it's not all bad. But yeah, I just wanted to make a quick video about this and just give my thoughts on it. I want to know what you guys think in the comments. I know I made an Emma video before this one that is getting a lot of attention, even negatively, but I don't want to go into that at the moment. I just want to move on to the next topic. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about Blade. Do you guys think he is wasted potential? Do you guys think he's still good? Do you guys think he could be better? Just let me know. What do you guys hope and dream for the character and whatnot? This is my 7th video, and again, I'm rolling with it. I'm still going with it. The other 2 videos did really well. So I'm just happy with it. So I want to keep going. I want to keep discussing things. So yeah, I'll catch you guys all on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.